Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is a very fun topic in terms of computer vision, and we're going to get into really some of the details of how to build working systems. And in particular, what we're going to get into is how to use the computer vision APIs. And what's great about this particular topic is that you don't really need to understand much about computer vision. You can immediately start to get to work. And what I like about the AWS environment for building things with computer vision is that AWS itself has many different features that make it simple to build things with computer vision. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get into something called AWS Cloud 9. And with AWS Cloud 9, we're going to provision an instance. We're going to go over some of the features. I'm going to show you how to check out code, put it inside of an environment. We'll go through and build some very simple projects, and then hook that into Lambda functions. So essentially, what we'll do is we'll build a real world working system from scratch together. And when you go through and review this video, you should be able to recreate it on your own and apply these concepts to other things. So to start off with, I think the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the AWS console here. And next up, I'm going to go to something called Cloud 9. And what's neat about Cloud 9 is that Cloud 9 simplifies many things about building things in a cloud-based environment. In fact, one of the things I'll do real quick here is show you some of the things that Cloud 9 does and just draw this out, just so we get these details out of the way. So let's go ahead and open up this sketchpad here, and I'm going to go to this console here, make a new screen. And one of the new advantages of cloud computing, and this is really even at the top universities in the world, they're struggling with this and figuring out solutions for this, is that when you have a top, again, even at these really elite level universities, they're figuring out ways to have a streamlined workflow. And so one of the things that's important to think about in terms of cloud computing is this concept of a data lake. And a data lake is critically important for computer vision. And the reason why is this infinity sign. So if we go through here and we build out this infinity sign, one of the things that we know about is that the data lake has the ability to handle infinite or near infinite disk I/O. It has the ability to handle near infinite storage, and also the data can be processed in the location that it's in. So inside of this particular location, I can actually connect things like I can connect the ML platform, maybe it's AWS SageMaker or some other similar system. I also can go through and I can serve out maybe a prediction inside of here. So I might have a cluster of machines that go through and they serve out a real world production API. Another thing that I could do potentially with the data lake is that I'm also able to work in the actual environment that I'm in. And this is what we're going to cover today is with Cloud 9, I can actually spin up an instance that's very powerful that works directly on the data and in the environment. We know that people are all over the world working, there could be somebody in China, for example, there could be somebody in the USA, there could be somebody in Europe, there could be somebody in South America. Now, what are the problems with these different locations in the data lake? Well, the big problem is if you're having to copy the data back and forth to these different regions of the world, and let's say you're at a coffee shop, for example, this is not a very good move because if your coffee shop has bad Wi-Fi, you can't copy the ML model back and forth. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is instead of using your laptop, what you do is you use this Cloud9 environment and you work directly inside of the location. So effectively, it's like a terminal, but inside of the location. And then you can talk to everything else inside of the data lake. So it's a little bit like being dropped in a hot air balloon or a plane into a castle. And then inside the castle, it's all protected. There's all kinds of nice things inside of it. But what you don't want to do is like send pigeons or doves like they do it in the Game of Thrones, and then they fly for several days. Then they go to the castle, they read the message, they fly back for several days. Too long, right? You want to be inside of the castle and you want to be working on things. So this is really the core concept, and many people don't know about this Cloud9 environment, and I think it's one of the key takeaways for cloud computing. So let's go ahead and spin this up here, and I'm going to call this computer vision demo. So computer vision demo, and I'll say this is a environment for computer vision. This is an environment for computer vision, and next up here, I'll look at the settings, and I would say by default, it's a good idea to just leave everything. Don't touch any buttons here. But I will say that what's nice about Cloud9 is that you can, if you go to other instance types, you can provision really large systems, like in fact, pure metal systems that have maybe more capacity than you could ever afford. So I would never use, for example, I wouldn't go buy this on my credit card, go to this, and then like the next day at my house, I have a 96 core machine. This would be a lot of money. I don't want to spend that money, but I would like to use it maybe for like 5 minutes. And that's what you can do with Cloud9 is you can use this for 5 minutes. You're only charged by the minute. But in this case, again, I'll just pick this, which is the free tier eligible. And I also would recommend Amazon Linux. So with Amazon Linux, this is the default platform for AWS, and it's a great way to build things that you know will work later in production. This is another interesting thing that I think is a huge feature of the Cloud9 environment is that it'll automatically time out after 30 minutes, so you don't have to get charged for it. So you can, if you use especially a cheap instance like this, it's almost free, and you get access to this incredible ecosystem inside of the data lake. So next up, I'll say create environment, and then it takes typically maybe 30 seconds or so to create this environment. So we'll let this thing spin up for a second. And one of the things that I'll do at the beginning here is just make this a little bit smaller so I can get a little bit more real estate. And a few things I'll point out as you see this thing spinning up. One is that there are several tabs here that are very helpful, and we'll go into those tabs in a second. But one of the tabs is this AWS Resources tab, and what that does is allows you to actually write Lambda functions inside of this environment, and that's probably one of the most secretive features that many people don't know about with AWS is that you can go in, write Lambdas, and go back and forth. And we'll actually do this in a little bit. But what's nice about that is that it makes it very easy to prototype solutions using this environment. And because I spawned this with an account that has high level privileges, I can make API calls very easily. So let me just give you a brief tour of some of the things you can do in this environment. The main thing to start out with is that it has the ability to do all of the API calls for you without typing passwords. So I can go through here and say AWS, S3, LS, for example, and I can just immediately start doing interactions. And what's great about this is that this listed all my buckets. I don't have to do API keys. I have extremely fast access, and then I can go through and manipulate data. I could go through it as well if I wanted to and do a CP command, copy the data back and forth. And again, I could be in the world's worst coffee shop that's very, very slow, but because I'm in a terminal, I don't care. All the data is stored here locally. So if you want to go through and look at some of these other commands here, you could look at the AWS command line tool. and look at some of the different things you can do with it. And pretty much everything that's inside of this, all the reference documentation, you can do all these things, right? Like you can, all of this is available and it's automatically installed. What I typically do as a first setup, though, is that I will go ahead and create a Git repo so that I can communicate. And why would I do this is that the source code itself will be able to do bidirectional communication to my environment. And that way, I could even throw this environment away and never use it again, but still all of my work gets persisted into GitHub. And then later I could check it out. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So the first step that I would do is potentially create a new environment. So let's go to GitHub and let's make a new environment here. And we'll call this computer vision. We'll say computer vision and we'll say July. And this is a project around cloud computer vision. Next up, I'll go through here and just initialize a README, go through, say, Python. Next up, I will say create repo. So pretty straightforward. And then the next thing, I'll click on code and click on this icon right here. Now, if I go back here, I will say git clone and just paste that in. So this will allow me to check out that repo. Now, this is not going to work. There's going to be a problem. There we go. So I'm going to have to fix that, which is I need to create an SSH key and give that SSH key to GitHub so it knows that this machine is authorized to go read and write to that repo. So how do I do that? I go SSH keygen -t RSA. This goes through, it makes a key. I can then maybe make this a little bit bigger and then cat this out here and then go like this. Okay, next up, I'm going to say that I want this key, which is the public key, to go to this location. I'll go to settings, go to SSH and GPG keys, make a new one and paste it in and say new key. There we go. Got this in there. It'll ask for a password. Once I do this, that's all I need to do. It's ready to go. If I go to the up arrow, there's a good tip to know about. If you do up arrow or down arrow, it'll go through your history. I can find that command and reclone it. Now I have access to that repo. And so then I'll go into this repo and CD into it. And now that I've got this repo, what I would typically do is start to build out a scaffold really quick so I could do computer vision. First step, I would create a Python virtual environment. So I'll go here and I'll say Python 3-m venv /, and then I like to name it the same name as the repo that I checked out. And so in this case, this is dot computer vision July. There we go. Next up, I'll source it. So we'll go through here. We'll say tilde dot computer vision July bin activate. Perfect. And then now that I've got this, I can say which Python, and you can see that it's actually living inside this directory. The reason I do this is that typically it makes it easier to switch back and forth between projects. I also know that I'll get a consistent experience. So now that I got that, what do I do next? I will go through and just make a few files that scaffold this out. So first up, I'll say make file. I'll make a requirements file. And then that's really the gist of it. And then what I also can do is look at this other repo, this computer vision repo, and just copy some things that I got in here. So let's see, I got a make file. This looks pretty good. Let's just copy this stuff inside of here and paste it in. And what's nice about this system is it's got the Cloud9 environment's got a great interface here for me to do an editor. So I can just paste this in. And in fact, one thing to be really careful of though, is that you have tabs when you do a makefile. And why would you use a makefile? The main reason is that makefiles installed on all Linux systems or Unix systems, and it works very well to build recipes. And since it's already there, it's been around for a long time, it makes it really simple to build stuff out. And so what I'll do here is I'll have an install command, a test command, a lint command. And then next up as well, I'll look at the old requirements from this other project, and I'll see if I can maybe use that as a template. So I'm going to go to requirements here, look at some of these files. Yeah, these look pretty good. Let's just use these as a template, and we'll put these requirements in here. And then once I've got that, remember that the makefile can do an install. So let's go ahead and now test this out. So what I'll do is I'll say make install, and what this will do is it will install all these packages, and also which are Pylint, Pandas, Boto3, Click, and IPython. This is an interactive interpreter. This is a command line tool. This is the SDK for AWS. This is a data science library in Python, and this is a linting library. So if I say make install, it goes through, reads all those, upgrades pip, installs my packages. And also what's great about this is it's really, really simple. Every time I work on a project, if I do the same thing, it's a great way to remember how to install stuff. I just type in make install. I don't have to do anything else. And you can see it's pretty robust way to install things. Make a virtual environment, make a makefile, make a requirements, source the virtual environment, say make install. Now that I got this, what I'll typically do is start playing around with the API. So let's say that I just got hired at a company and they hired me as a machine learning engineer, and they heard that I was really good at Python and computer vision and cloud, and they want to, the first day at work, they want me to start building code. Well, I can do this, and I can do this very easily. And what I would do is I would just start playing around with IPython first and build out something by using the interactive interpreter. So if we look at this other project here, uh, I can actually kind of try some ideas out. So one of the things that I'll try out here potentially is I think I had one called Animal that looks pretty good. And so this is a command line tool that will detect what kind of um, it basically detects the labels of something. And notice that it will look inside of a bucket in S3. So let's go through here real quick, and let's open up a console to AWS, and let's make a bucket. So let's go to the console here. Let's make a bucket so that we can do things with a bucket. So we'll go through here and we'll call this S3. And maybe we'll call this computer vision something. So we'll call computer vision animals or something like that. Animals, there we go. We'll create this bucket. Next, 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 next. Leave. Uh-oh. You've created more buckets than allowed. So I've been busy. So let me just delete this bucket. Uh, and I'll hopefully make it so that I can make more buckets. This is a badge of honor. I've created so many buckets that they've shut me down. Okay, so let's try this bucket again, and we'll call this computer vision demo. Try that out. Hopefully no one's ever selected that name because these have to be globally unique. Okay, looks like that works. So now that I got this computer vision demo bucket, what I will do, so computer vision demo bucket, here we go, is I will put something in there. So how do I get something? Let's find like a husky. I like huskies. Let's say husky, ooh, husky. There we go. Husky, we'll look at images. This one looks good. Let's download that. I'll say save image, put this as a husky, and it's going to be a JPEG. And I'm going to just upload that inside of this S3 bucket. And so I got a husky waiting in the wings here. Add files. There's my husky. Perfect. Great. Next step, upload this thing. Okay, now that I got the husky in here, the next thing that I would do is just start to play around a bit with the with my interface. So I know that I'm going to have to import Boto3. So we'll go through here. We'll say Boto3. And if I look at the other example here, I'll need to make a client that is a recognition client. So that's just a I'm just going to instantiate the Bodo 3 recognition API. Now, what does this do? Let me just show you real quick what this does so we kind of get this out of the way. So if you go to recognition, it's an API that does some things around computer vision. That's pretty neat. And they've already built all these pre-trained models for us. So if I go to object and scene detection, I could go down here, grab that husky, put it in here, upload it, there we go. And you can see it does all the stuff, like it knows it's a canine, a pet, husky, all the stuff. And if I look at the response, it'll come back with a JSON payload that has all that in there. So that's somewhat useful. I mean, it's definitely useful, but it's even more useful if I can programmatically talk to it. So I'm going to make an instance of this object here. So, and there we go. I have a client. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to slowly build this out. So I will say this, there we go, client detect labels, that's the same API call. And then I can just kind of try this out. Okay, so image is the next one. Okay, great. And next up here would be the S3 object, which is just going to point to that location that I set up earlier. And then this will be the bucket. Now, I'm going to change this bucket to the new one that I just created. So I'll return, and then I'll just change this to computer vision demo, computer vision demo, and then I'll do a return here, and then put the name, and then the name I'm also going to change. So I'm going to say name, and then we'll call this husky. And then I believe it was .jpeg, but I can double check. Why guess if you can check? So yeah, husky.jpeg, and it's in the computer vision demo location. Perfect. There we go. And next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in just like this. There we go. And then I'm going to put this next one inside of here, which is just a little bit further of a parentheses, and then I will put in this. So this is really all I need to make that API call to the S3 bucket. And if I do this, in theory, it would give me the information if I had the quotes right. There we go. So I make that quote right. There we go. So now you can see that, look, it found the parent of it. It figures out confidence intervals. It says a husky is it thinks it's 59% wolf, right, or 59% probability. So it comes up with all these great names. 99% confident that it's a husky. So I've got something great working, and now what I would do is I would actually now that I tested it out, build a command line tool first before I get into anything too tricky. Build out a command line tool. So how do we do this? Well, let's just go ahead and make this. Let's just make a file called animal. Now let me just start to wire up this and put this into source control as well. So I'll say get status, and I'm going to just add these files in here first, and then do a git commit and say adding code for computer vision, push, and then now when you first commit to GitHub, if you haven't created the configuration, it'll ask you for this, and I just manually do it. It's easy enough for me. So I go through here and I just put in my name. There we go. That looks good. And then I also will go through here and put in my username. There we go. Put in my username or for email. That looks good. Great. And then I will amend and reset the author. Perfect. There we go. Okay, so now that I do this, I will save this out, write it out, and then I will exit. Okay, and then I'll push it. Got the initial structure set up. And one of the things I can do now is now build out that command line tool. So again, I have the animal file here, and I guess if I'm lazy, I can just kind of crib these examples. So this is what I did earlier. I just basically did this. So let me just grab this and just throw it into our project over here. So I'm going to go to animal, paste this in, and let's walk through what this does and maybe even fix it up a little bit. So this is a script that uses a command line tool library called click, which makes it easy to parse arguments. And I can add help messages that says this code detects animals. Maybe I even put a little more descriptive text in there. I say pass in the bucket and file name. There we go. Now, this one right now only has file. I need your file name, and maybe we just clean it up a little bit. There we go. And then this is the name of the file in your S3 bucket. Right. So you can start to build out this really helpful tool that you could use over and over again for years and years. Now we're missing something though, which is that this detect, please pass. Yeah. So let's add another option because this was not that useful with only one. Let's add two options here. So we'll go here, and then this one will be the bucket. So that way anybody can use this. They don't have to use my bucket, which they probably won't have access to. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to say bucket. I need your bucket. There we go. And this is the name of your S3 bucket. Here we go, of your S3 bucket. Great. Now I also need to pass in that parameter into this code here, into the function. So we'll go and we'll say, there we go, detect. And again, I make an instance of this. Now I also need to clean this up because it's a hard coded. So let's actually take that bucket out and swap it out with a variable bucket. There we go. And also what we can do is that the click library has some pretty cool formatting options where you can do colors. And I think I have an example here of some colors that you can color the output to make it a little bit easier to look at. And let's see here. Yeah, let's look. I like this. Let's look at the red color. This is good. So let's go back to this output, and let's, instead of printing, let's use this. We'll say, your detection, or something like that. And then also, if you remember, so we would, if we look at the output here, it maybe scroll this up for a little bit, is that it's got a structure like labels. And so maybe what I can do as well is kind of clean it up a little bit later, but and put the actual labels and make it less verbose. But for now, I'll keep it simple and just put the response in here. So we'll just say your and we'll say your labels. There we go, your labels, like this, perfect. And then I can just take this out. And so what this is again going to do is no value for file, no value for bucket. Yeah, because we're going to pass these in here. So that looks pretty good. So the next thing that I would do, now that I've got this tool, is I would probably lint it to make sure that the linting passes so that the syntax is good. And that's what this command does right here, is it says, basically look at it, make sure syntactically it's correct. So let's try this out. Okay, looks like it's good. Now, what the linting will do is if I had a mistake in here, let's say at the very top here, I did something where I just made some bad syntax. Like if you don't declare a variable completely, that's actually syntactically incorrect, and it'll blow up the program. If I look at the lint, it found it, right? It found that this is a problem. So I can actually use this as a feedback loop to make sure I write good code. So next up, what I would do is I would chmod this. So I type in chmod plus x and then do animal. And then now that I've done chmod plus X, I can just go like this, and it will know that it should run in Python and in this virtual environment. There we go. I need your file name, and it'll prompt me for each one. So we know that the file name was husky.jpg, like that. We know that the bucket was called computer vision demo, and now it says some kind of an error. So let's see if we can fix it. So it says error when calling the security token required. Um, yeah, that's interesting. Haven't seen that one before, but let's see if we can debug this. So we're passing in the file, passing in the bucket. Let's, that's weird. Let's try it again. Maybe it was just a fluke. So we'll just say, this time I'm just going to explicitly do it. We'll say husky.jpg dash bucket equals computer vision demo or something. I think that was the name of the bucket. So I'm still getting that same error. So these are all normal things that happen when you're building stuff out here. Probably what's happening is that I've got some kind of bug in my code, and so let me show you how we can sort that out. So what I would typically do is start to look at adding print statements. So I would maybe go through here and say, print I can import, right? And just kind of go through line by line and see if we can figure out what's going on here. So next up here, let's run this same command. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to demo figure this out. So did the first thing work? So we see I can import. Okay, so that works. So that's a good first step, is does anything work? Next up, I would add a debug statement that says, do I get variables? Do I get variables? There we go. And then I would print this is the file, and then I can just pass in the file and then say this is the bucket, and then pass in the name of the bucket. So does this work, right? And let's try that out. There we go. And okay, so we know that I was able to get the file. Oh, there we go. So that's the problem. So I was passing in, so already we can tell that I was passing in the wrong file name, and we were easily able to fix that. So one of the things that I might want to do then is make this more user friendly. And what I could do is I could actually say something like I could actually add a colored response here to help fix this, so that other people don't make the same mistake that I made. So what I would do is go here and say your file name is, and then pass in the file, and then do the color, I don't know, like blue, and then do the same thing again. And then for this one, I can say your bucket is, and then I'll put in the bucket, and then maybe we'll do this one green or something. Hopefully green is a color this recognizes. And then when I recall it again, I'm going to pass in JPEG like this. Let's try it out. And we still have a bug. So let's at least say, it says your file name is Husky and your bucket is computer vision. So what else are we having a problem with? Let's go to the next one. Is that we have some other issue, is that client response. So I guess the question is, the security token in the request is expired. That's definitely interesting. client detect tables, bucket, file. So maybe what I could do is see whether does it get to this spot here. So can I say maybe I'll just put a print statement that says, did I get this? And then put in an if statement. And I'm sure I have some kind of really simple bug. Here we go. Response. Let's try that. That looks good. I'll try it again. Animal, husky, computer vision demo. And it doesn't get to that point. So definitely we know that the problem is inside of this line here is name file is the last spot that it gets to. So I must have maybe like the syntax is incorrect or something like that. So how could I do? Well, one is I could cheat and I could just look at one of these other examples here and see I must be pasting in something incorrectly. And let's see if we can find out what it is. In fact, if I wanted to, maybe let's just compare these two things here and see if there's something obvious that I'm missing. So if I put this here, like this, and I look at those two things, detect labels, S3 object, and I say file, bucket. Yeah, it looks like file bucket. Well, maybe what I can do is this, is I can just is take out this code and see there's probably some really small subtle bug here that I'm missing. Do this like that, okay. And I can just hard code in what I know is the correct working response here. So if I say computer vision demo is the bucket, and the file will be the husky.jpg. Let's try this out. So this is just hard coded, and in theory this should work, and it still doesn't work. So we know that there's some kind of weird something going on in this particular code example. So yes, did you find it? Did I misspell it? Let's see here. Husky. Ooh, that looks promising here. Let's see if we can find this out. Aha, that does look like you're right. Yes, that's it. So we can see here that this might be in the future this is a good tip. Well, still having problems. Oh no, because I need to do control husky. You know what it is? It's I'm still messing it up. It's JPEG like that. Interesting that that's still having problems with that particular husky.jpg. Let's try this out. Let's just copy this specifically and put this. Oh, you know what I'm doing actually? Now that I think about it, look, I'm making it even more complex in that computer vision demo husky. Was that different? That's husky. Why is this so hard? this should be pretty easy, but maybe I'm just doing something really simple. Well, first of all, I don't even need to pass these in here. I could even anyway. There's some kind of stupid bug that we've got that later I'll fix. the main thing that I want that I'll take out of this. In fact, I'll be lazy here, and I'm gonna just bypass this part because that's not the most interesting part. The most interesting part is if I go through here and if I type in I think it takes file husky. Let's see here. Let's go here. This code. Go to this. The main takeaway is that you can build these little tools that still still have problems. Animal, I need your file. And let's look at this one, computer vision test. I'm sure it's some ridiculously simple problem that I'm missing here. Computer vision, there we go. Vision May 16. Let's try that one. I think that's the one I'm looking at here. No, computer vision 619. Let's find this and let's literally find the exact file here. Let's go to this. Okay, so if I look inside of here, what do we got? We have husky.jpg. So we this is definitely an easy way to make mistakes. Is the name it is again if I look here HUSQ. So I think the misspelling has really been what's killing me is my spelling. Wow, this is for some reason this particular system is struggling here. I don't know why nothing works. Animal husky.jpg. Well, for some reason I have massive failure in this particular code example, but we'll come back to that. The main thing I want to show you is that usually this works is you first play out with it in the command line here, which I guess I could even go back to, and if we go to this should work. In fact, I could even paste this in there, that this should be in theory the exact code that we're running, and I could just delete these pieces out like this, and this might even work. Let's see if this works. If this doesn't, it's not a big deal because I wanted to move on to the next thing anyway, and we'll probably figure out what the bug is before we leave. Did you? Hi. Ah, okay. Maybe. Ah, okay. Let's take a look at this. Um, so let's see here. Okay, next that keep expired token. Real interesting. Huh. So maybe an error occurred. I looked at the tutorial. Interesting. Um, hmm. Yeah, maybe there is something weird going on. Yeah, I mean, occasionally these I preferably when calling get off of the security. Huh. Yeah, maybe ECR. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, maybe there is something weird going on in my. Occasionally, you get weird problems like this. I don't see what. Yeah, this looks promising. What? Let me try one more time here and see if I could fix this. If not, it's not that big of a deal. I'll work around it because I have a different thing I'm going to show. Uh, but yeah, there could be something weird behind the scenes happening that I'm just not paying attention to. That's causing me. But yeah, that looks good. That looks good. So let's try one more time here. Go through here and husky unindented error. Let's go through this and let's just run this. Line 21. Let's go to this part. This can, I think here, this should in theory be good, expected string. There we go. Expected this one. That looks good. This one. That looks like that would be, in theory, good to go. And oh, I know what the problem is. It's this. This needs to be indented, and then this one needs to be indented. There we go. Okay. So if this doesn't work again, not that big of a deal. It's kind of, yeah, maybe maybe actually let's try that. Let's try this. Let's try that. Maybe there's something really weird that doesn't happen that often. Let me relaunch it, and maybe that would be funny if it's actually nothing to do with my code. I always suspect my code is messed up, but it's possible that, yeah, there's something really weird going on inside of here. So let's try it again. Yeah, so there was just some weird thing happening that's like, so what I can do is go back to this. Yeah, I think I've had that once before, which is pretty interesting actually, that all that happened. But let's go to the fancy one, um, and let's go to the keep going, and yeah, let's go back to here. Let's keep going back to here. So hopefully, if we get lucky, all this just works. And there we go. Look, so does this, like, will we get lucky and this will just work? And I'll say file husky bucket computer vision demo. At least this is a better message. It says unable to get metadata from S3. And let's look at the messages that came back here. So the bucket is this. Just because we spent a lot of time on this, I'll just move on. but you saw that one of them worked, building a command line tool. But the that's usually the way I work. First IPython, second command line tool. Now let's get into using Lambda real quick and get past this piece. So what I would do next if I was building a computer vision API is I would go to Lambda, go here, go to Lambda, and just let me show you some of the things that you can do with Lambda real quick. So if we go through here, we go to Python, and I select runtime, and I go to Python, let's say maybe 3.6, and I say create function. The main reason why Lambdas are so powerful and so fun is that you can build things that respond to events. And so for computer vision workflows in particular, these are really powerful. And one of the ones I always like to demo to people is my Marco Polo. So I say if event here, and the event is a thing that gets passed in. This could be an event from, let's say, S3, or it could be an event from a queue or event from the database or something. Is if I go through here and I say the name is equal to Marco, and I return back the word polo. Otherwise, what I do is I say return back no, like that. And so all this is going to do, and maybe I'll print this so you can see what the event is, and say, this is my event, like this. This is a good way to just kind of get your feet wet and debug things a little bit. So let's go ahead and save this. I'll make a test event here. And this one I'll just say, I'll call this Marco. Inside I say name is equal to Marco. And we'll do Marco as capitalized. I can format the JSON, create it, test it, and you'll see that the word polo appears and it says what my event was. If I go to another event and I say, for example, create a new event. This one, we'll call this Bob. This one won't work. It'll say no because it won't match. It won't match that that Marco statement. There we go. Test it. There we go. No. Right. So you can see it's pretty simple to get stuff building. And if I go back to my computer vision environment and I go to this tab here, I can go to the function I just created. Which, what did we call this? We called this thing We called it Python, really? Okay, that's weird. Python. Okay, sure. Let me go back here, and I will look for the word Python. There we go. And I'm going to right click on it and say import this into my environment. And then what's really fun about this, look, it builds it back in here. So I can go back and forth, and play around with stuff. And I can even, if I refresh here, I can build out this and say run local or run remote, either one. And I can play with it local here. That's kind of fun. And I can say, name Marco. Okay, so why am I showing this, and how does this relate to the code that we were working on earlier? Well, the main concept here is that I can use this workflow to kind of build out back and forth functions that respond to events. And how would I do that? Well, the main takeaway is that inside of Cloud9, I'm sorry, not Cloud9, inside of this Lambda, I can make this respond to events. So if I add a trigger here, you can see there's lots of different triggers, APIs, IoT, payloads, logs, DynamoDB, all kinds of stuff. But the one that's most important for computer vision, I think, is S3. And if I select S3, I could select the bucket that I was building before. And so I think we called it computer vision demo, right? And so let's go ahead and go here, computer vision demo. And I can tell it what kind of event I want to listen to. So in a real world scenario, you may be putting stuff inside of the bucket over and over and over again, and then you want to do some kind of label detection and then do something with that label. So in this case, I'm just going to say every time I put a new image in the bucket, do label detection, and I'm also going to enable the trigger. And so I'm going to acknowledge this and go ahead and push OK. Now, the other thing that I have to do is that if I go to permissions, in order for it to do anything useful, you're going to have to give it like a higher level of resources to actually do something here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, go down to a role, and I'm going to find a role that has higher level privileges. And and what IAM roles do is they allow your Lambda functions to do things on your behalf. And so I've already had one earlier, I think called like admin or something like that, that can do some admin stuff. So I'm going to find it. Here we go. There's the admin role. And once I do that, now it's pretty much ready to do something more complex and respond to events. I happen to have some code here that I built earlier, and let me walk you through what it does. So the Lambda, let's see, let's look at this. Lambda example detect. No, this bucket recognition, detect labels. You give me this. Where is this it? Let's see. I've got a Lambda example here. Maybe that is the one. That looks pretty good. So let's take this. And you can see it looks kind of similar to our code we're working on before. It takes a bucket and a name. It will find the label, and then I will have a Lambda handler that all it does is take the bucket, the name. But the difference here is that this isn't as tricky as I want it to be. I want to respond to an event. So I want this one, which is that I listen to, this is the label, but I respond to the S3 event by um, knowing that I can intercept it and parse it. And so how would I do that? If I go to this test here and I go to configure test events, you can say create new test event and go to event template and find the S3 location, which is here, like S3 put. And look, see how it's a payload. So S3, and I think there's an example here that's a simpler S3 example, but S3. Well, let's just keep this one. Basically, you have to parse this payload, which has the name of the object and the location of the bucket, and accept it, and then do something on that behalf. So That's what this code does over here, this code that I was looking at. So I'm gonna grab this code, and I can paste it into either console, doesn't matter which one. Since I'm in here, maybe I could put it in here, or I could go back to Cloud9. Let's let's go back to Cloud9 and paste it in there. So I'm going to go to the Lambda, and I'm going to just throw this in there like this. And again, we walk through it. All it does is it uses the Boda library, and it has a label function that does what we were just doing earlier that we're having problems with. But this handler, it will look for all the events that come in and call that label function and then just print it out. And so that's what this thing does. So I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to right click on this thing, and I'm going to deploy it. Okay, that was pretty quick. And if I go back to Lambda here and I refresh it, if I go to this, hopefully it shows me the response, or this should be changed in here. There we go. So you can see that this code is now inside of here. And so what I can do is also look at the permissions and make sure that the permissions are correct. So Lambda permissions are correct. And so now I also want to look at the S3 trigger. We know that that's going to trigger to that bucket. So now I can just upload something into the bucket, and it should call this code. So I'm going to go to the bucket, which is, let's see here. Let's go to console. And actually, in a way, this code is a little easier to write because I just have to drop something inside of there. I'm not parsing the name of the file. So I'm going to go here, go to that. Actually, let's double check what the name of this Lambda function code is. It's here. Is which? Oh yeah, it works on any bucket. So okay, so I just want to double check. So I'm gonna go to the computer vision bucket. There we go, computer vision demo. And then I'm going to grab some other. So we already have husky in there. So let's grab a different animal like an elephant or something like that. And I'm going to throw this. Here we go. I'll grab this one. I'll save this image. And elephant. There we go. Go back to this and throw this into this location, upload it. So that's all it should do to trigger the event. And then we could look back inside of here, go to monitoring, and we should see that it was called when we do this. And how would we know it was called? Well, one way would be that we could look at the logs, and the logs themselves should show the timestamp, which they show, and they should show the elephant. There we go. So even though this is massively more complex, we had no problems with it. So this code right here, I can see that I'm able to detect this. Now I can just keep going and putting more and more stuff inside of here. So the next step thing that I'll do is I'll grab maybe like a lion or something like that. Go here. Here's a lion, and grab this guy. Call this one. Maybe I'll also grab like a cat or something. Go here. There's a cat. Grab this one. So let's put these inside here, and let's just keep testing this out. So I can again go to this bucket and say upload, and then find the files and find my cat and my elephant like this, and then upload those things and say next, 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 upload. Go again back to the logs, and it should be very quick. That let's see here. Yeah, is it? It may appear in the. There we go. Here's a second timestamp. It already called it. There we go. Elephant. Load more. Let's see. Resume. Let's just double check that I got the right timestamps here. So I have 10:02. So it found the elephant, but where is Where is, maybe the other one is earlier. Let's look at this one. Oh, okay, so it just put it in a different bucket. So we see elephant, we see cat, and we should see a lion here as well. But anyway, the main thing is that I'm able to start detecting these things as I put them in one by. It might be in another log file somewhere. I guess just to be safe here, I could even type in lion. Would that work? So it's not in this log. Would it be in this one? Maybe it's in this one. Let's look for lion. I don't know why the lion doesn't show up, but does the cat? So it must be in this one. Find. So for sure the cat shows up. And if we look at the labels for this thing, we see that it's able to say this is my S3 event. Now, I'm not really identifying anything that useful because the way the Lambda function is set up, it doesn't print anything interesting. So if we look at this code, let's see if we can fix this. Notice that all I do is print the name of the bucket and I print the key, and this label, I don't print these labels, so they don't show up in a log. So what I need to do next here is put something that's big, like, let's go here and say, these are my labels. Okay, these are my labels. And then I will put in the labels here. My labels, there we go. That looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and save this. These are my labels, good. And then I'm gonna put another thing in here. We'll call, how about a crocodile? Let's do something weird. I'll put one crocodile in here. There we go. I'll call this croc. Go to this bucket, upload it, upload the crocodile. Let's see, crocodile. Okay, next. Okay, now that we got this crocodile here, I can again go to my Python Lambda function, go to the log files, which show up in monitoring. And in theory, there should now be the labels printed out next. And so this is 1006. So this looks like good. And so, syntax problem, which we can fix. Error on line 29. So we can fix that pretty easily. Let's go back to our Lambda function here. And let's look at line 29. Line 29. Yeah, I didn't put closing quotes on here like this. And I save it. Let's put the croc back in again. So I'm going to just, I think it'll actually respond to all events here. So I'm going to just delete this croc here. Let's see. How do I delete this? I can just go here. Actions. I don't know why the delete's not showing up. Maybe I can't see it in my screen. So if I say, delete, there we go. That's what I want, delete. So I'm going to delete this croc, and then I'm going to upload the croc again to trigger, which I think it might have already triggered just from the delete, but let's see here if this will work as well. There we go, upload it. Again, go back to my Lambda function, go to the monitoring. Yes. I forgot to put the line in. Okay, well there we go. So that's a good one. There we go. So we see the croc, Good, there we go. And now we found the labels. So this is there we go. So now I'm starting to build this. We actually have a real system here. And now let's go find the lion next year because we did. You're right. I didn't put the lion in. So let's go. You're right. Let's put the lion in. Let's see if we can find the lion. There we go. Let's do next here. Next. So the next thing that we should see is if I go to the logs again, we should see a slightly new timestamp. And let's refresh. Maybe it's in here. Lion. There we go. There's a lion. I found these labels. There's my labels, right? And it goes through and it prints out what it is. So this why this is such a big deal, this workflow, is that I'll just draw this out and why I think it's important. And maybe at the end I'll see if I can fix that command line tool because it's irritating that I couldn't fix it. Is I would recommend this style when you're building things in that if you're able to, again, just remember that all the stuff is in the data lake, right? So that's the most important thing to remember is everything is inside of here. So how do you actually quickly build tools? So that the first thing that I would do is I would make a Cloud9 instance or whatever cloud you're on. You don't have to use Cloud9. You could use Google Cloud Shell or Azure Cloud Shell. Second, I would set up the scaffolding for your project. So, set up a scaffold. And then three, I would use IPython to explore the API. IPython to explore the API. And then kind of get a feel for what it is that you're doing. So just imagine, for example, see how much problems we had I'd probably doing something really, really small. But imagine if you didn't first test that out and know that it worked, and I'm trying to use just Cloud9 Lambdas, it would be impossible. Like I could be stuck for weeks on it because I wasn't sure if anything worked. But when you do this, what it does is it lets you ask the question, does anything work? And this is probably the most important question that you can think about when you're building things. Does anything work? And if you can't answer this question, you're in big trouble because again, you just saw all the problems that I had. But fortunately, I felt confident that I could eventually get something to work because I knew that something worked. And so I just skipped that step that didn't work. So the next step would be build command line tool, even though we had problems with it, build CLI. Then what I would do is then I would build out like a Lambda. So or you could again, Google has their own cloud functions like build a AWS Lambda, for example, and then maybe step 6 is a trigger, right? And if you do this kind of a workflow, the speed. So why would you do this? Is that this is a speedy workflow. Even when you discover little bugs like this, still, if somebody was hiring me and they said, "Hey, I want you to build a serverless pipeline for computer vision," I did it. I struggled for a little bit, but I eventually got to the end because I was able to identify parts that don't work, parts that do work, and some of the things that you can build with this is as well are very complex. And in particular, one of the things that I've built in the past would be something like this, which is I would have we'll call this like a serverless architecture. Is you have the raw data located in let's say a database, maybe it's DynamoDB or some other database, uh, DynamoDB, and then inside of this Dynamo, it has like a key value pairs, and these key value pairs could be anything. It could be models or companies or whatever. And then what you do is you have a CloudWatch timer. And the CloudWatch timer, what it can do is it can trigger a Lambda function, and this Lambda function will go and tell this database to pull the data out, and then it'll put it into a queue. And SQS is a queue that can have an infinite load. So just like the storage system can handle the infinite storage and infinite disk I/O, SQS can handle infinite traffic. And then you can have, so we'll call this the producer Lambda. So this would be the producer Lambda. Uh, and then the consumer Lambda would be triggered on events. So every time a message is put into the queue, the consumer Lambda would go through and actually process. And maybe what this process is some computer vision task or a labeling or something like this, and then it would process my work. So this is another event-driven architecture that I've used in the real world. And if you have this producer consumer architecture, you can build really complex things. And some of the examples of some of the things that you could build, a good example of this would be with the deep lens system. And let me show you one of the things that you can do. So with the deep lens system, which hooks into AWS, you could build we'll just call this like a deep lens architecture. Here we go. Architecture. And what you could do is you could have this device and it's listening to a video stream, and then inside of this it's got a Lambda function that this Lambda function reads in and out of S3, because this is where the model for the system lives. And if it finds the correct the correct prediction, so let's say it finds like a face or something like this, what could happen is that the deep lens will take the payload, which we'll call this like the face payload, and we'll say true or something like this, and it will put it into IoT system. And then from IoT system, you could have another component that potentially does some other processing, like it could do additional labeling, for example. So one of the things I've seen people do is they'll take maybe the name of this image inside of the payload that comes out. They'll recognize it's a face. They'll save the picture of the face to like S3 or something like this. Then they'll send a packet which has the path to the file, and then they'll have the recognition API do additional labeling on it, and then send the results of those labels maybe to a database like DynamoDB. So why would you do this? So let's say that you wanted to build something very quickly with computer vision that recognized people that were wearing, maybe like a hat, for example, and you wanted to identify anybody that had a hat. So it would constantly looking at people and recognize a face. It would take all faces that it found or all people. It would save the data to S3. The thing that we just built, which can find labels, inside of the label that it does, you could look for the word hat. If it finds the word hat, it could take that file, it could go to the database, put an entry in the database that says the length or the path to the file with the person with the hat plus the actual icon, and then you over a period of time you could have that in some location, and it could be constantly monitoring and finding all the people with a hat. Now I don't know why you would want to do that, but that's just an example of how you could start to tie these pieces together, and that's why the this event-driven architecture is really so powerful. So that's in a nutshell what's interesting about this. So let's be brave here. And now that we know the theory, we've got it to work. Let's see if I can go back to my Cloud9 environment and kind of clean things up. So the big thing that I was struggling with was this animal here, and there's got to be something I'm doing that's really, really simple and wrong to fix. So I guess if I was going to debug this quickly and someone was waiting on me to fix this, I think what I would do is just make a separate script that just takes all the complexity out of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another file called debug, like this, and I'm just going to take the pieces out that are like important. So we really only need this inside, and I'm just going to hard code everything and figure out why I have a problem. And then I know I need this. Really, I only need a couple things. So let's go here and let's do this. So I got the Boto3 entry. I've got the client needs to be defined here, which is this. And like that. And that looks good. And then the bucket, I'm just going to hard code it, which we know would be the computer vision demo. And let's see if it does anything work. Let's see demo. And then I could do and let's pick an easier name here, one that's not going to kill me, like cat.jpg. Let's do that one. Let's just throw this in. We'll say cat.jpg like that. And then I can just print this out. So this is, in theory, the simplest possible thing that could work. Does it work? Let's see here. Let's say Python debug. So even the fact that that doesn't work does make me suspect there's something weird going on in this particular environment that doesn't make sense to me. And I guess I could even try it out by even going to the command line. Yeah, again, I've seen this issue before, which is kind of a weird one, and I'm sure it's something just stupid that I'm doing. I guess I could try other code as well. That's another thing I could do. I could look at other examples that, let's see here. I think I probably had something like face or something. What's this thing do? Like this looks even simpler. Let's try this. So I know that this code probably worked at some point. I'm just going to paste this in and see if this works. There we go. I don't know if this is different or not, but let's do Python debug. Oh, you know what it is? Is it this? Security? Huh. Yeah, really weird. There must be something unusual about this particular environment that's like messed up or something. So maybe what I'll do, it doesn't really matter for what we're doing other than it's annoying. And what I could do is maybe is go here, open it up one more time, and see if closing it and opening it again will do anything. Yeah, I don't. Sometimes Amazon has weird stuff it does, and I guess I could even go back to this and go back in time and figure out what this simple script was that I was working on before, right? Which is the what did I call this thing? Which is cat. Yeah, I guess maybe that's the big takeaway is that it's really important to have ways to debug what you're working on so that you don't really tear your hair out, because if you don't, um, if you're not able to do this, it could really be frustrating to you to not be able to kind of go and say, hey, wait a second, something should be working here. Why does this not work? This definitely should work. Invalid syntax. I guess I still have invalid syntax here. In fact, let's just paste this one in. Let's just keep it simple. Anyway, I got something to work. I debugged it. Name response. Let's save this thing. This whole environment is messed up. So who knows what happened? But the main takeaway is that even in the scenarios where you have problems that crop up, that if you're able to use the thing that I talked about, which is this kind of like architecture of does anything work? that you can power through, and you can let's see here. Where's our power through here? Yeah, here we go. This is it. This is probably the big takeaway is is that it's so common that there's problems, and if you have lots of ways that you can solve it, even if in this case it sounds like there's just some crazy bug that never comes up that's weird about the Cloud9 environment, I still can get stuff to work because I can isolate it to the different piece. So I think that's the main takeaway that I think is important to share. And I guess maybe a good stopping point as well for us is to see if there's anything else that anyone has questions about, or kind of go from there.